Anybody can fly a radio control airplane. Well, there's a couple steps. First of all, you got to see if you're really interested, and then the next step is find somebody that flies or go to a local flying site. Find somebody that's willing to help you out, whether you join the club.
I joined Intermountain Silent Flyers, which is dedicated primarily to sailplane events, and from that they have every 2 years they have an event. It's called out here at Point of the Mountain, it's called Soar Utah, where people from all over the world, we've had occasion for them to come in and participate, and everybody has the same involvement. A lot of people like scale airplanes, a lot of people like racing airplanes that fly on the slopes. You have slope races as well as just fun flying. You can spend as much as you want in the hobby or as little as you want. A lot of the planes that we have for this event, we have 3 different events. One is scale, one is molded, and another one is foam, which are the PSS planes, which are replica models of the ones World War II, the vintage planes that were there. Most of them are built out of foam. They have panel lines that make them look exactly to scale, the detail that you put a lot of time in, and it's just a real fun time.
Well, I started flying when I was 13 years old, and I flew control line planes. They're not radio control, but there's strings going to the plane, and you have a handle, and you go around in a circle, and you can just control the pitch of the up and down pitch of the aircraft. And then I got a radio control and built my first glider and flew that, and then I flew powered planes for quite a while, and I flew pretty consistently until I was about 16, and I got into high school and I had other things going, and I actually quit flying for quite a while. And then I started flying when I was about 24. I flew gliders, powered gliders, for a short time and got out of it again. And then when I was 30, I was just kind of looking for something new to do, and that's when electric airplanes were just coming out, and started flying electric. And then I had a friend who introduced me to slope soaring, and I started flying slope soaring gliders, which is what this event is primarily all about. And I sold everything that had a motor, and since then I've just strictly flown slope soaring gliders for the last 7 or 8 years, I guess.
I've been flying radio controlled airplanes since 1968. Got involved as a child, about 7. Started building control line models, and then later on went with radio control. Was fortunate to have a lot of friends who kept me involved. Later on ended up in the racing program and ended up participating in a lot of the races here, and then got in the Formula Ones, which was the faster airplanes.
My company is Wyoming Windworks. We make high-performance radio-controlled gliders. We use a mix of composite materials, fiberglass, epoxy, carbon fiber, Kevlar, and we also use various foams and woods, balsa wood, specialized plywoods, things like that. So,
a lot of people want to start out with a nice jet, but you've got to start out with a simple airplane, one that's easy to fly. And there's a couple ways you can buy a simulator, but those will help you get into flying without having to worry about crashing. You can crash 100 times on the simulator, it won't cost you a penny.
The festival here at Point of the Mountain got started about 9 years ago. We are very fortunate in Utah to have a slope that's one of the few in the entire world where in the mornings we have a north wind or a south wind, and in the evenings we have a north wind. And just because of that, we have so much emphasis put on it. We have that luxury that we've now attracted hang gliders, paragliders, and things like that. We share the slope with the hang gliders and paragliders, and for one weekend every other year we have the option of closing the slope down, and where we can bring all these other people in and have more people flying and
all right.
share.
Well, there are builders and there are flyers. In these events you'll see a lot of guys who just love to build. That's their passion. Sometimes they're good pilots. A lot of times they're not the greatest pilots. And then you have people who just love to fly, and a lot of times they're the guys who've got the beat up planes. They're just smashed up, but that's all they want to do is fly. And you got an intermix of people in between there who like to build and fly. I like to build and fly. Yeah.
The planes you can do a lot of different ways. With the new CAD programs and the airfoil programs, what you do is you pick a plane that you like. You can go ahead and download the program. You can go ahead and cut the wings, the airfoils on it out of foam, and then you can vacuum bag them or put carbon, Kevlar, and other composites in to make the wings a lot stronger. This particular aircraft that I have in front of me is all carbon. It's a molded plane. It's done in a mold, and it has carbon in it. As a result of the carbon, it has a problem with getting the radio waves to the antennas and that. And so what we do is we exit these with the antennas on both sides of the fuselage there.
In slope soaring gliders, there's pretty much 3 different construction techniques. The first one is an EPP foam. It's a bouncy compressible foam, and usually those are cut out by some machine or a hot wire cutter, and they're glued together and they're covered with a special plastic or a film, and the radio compartment goes in there. Those are great to learn on because they can bounce, or if your landing zones are really rocky, they'll just bounce and you don't have to care. They're not super expensive. Then the next one is what's called stick construction, and that's little pieces of balsa wood that are cut out and glued together, sometimes over a plan. You've got the plans and you cut out all the pieces, or sometimes they're cut out for you, and they're all glued together over a plan, and that makes the structure. And then that is covered with a plastic film, or in the olden days it was like a tissue paper and a special material called dope. You'd brush it on and it would make the tissue paper shrink, or they'd actually use silk. But the modern technique is typically a heat shrink covering material. Goes on with an iron, and then it heated up and it shrinks, gets all nice and pretty. And then the other technique is a composite glider, and those are constructed typically in a mold, and you're using fiberglass, Kevlar, carbon fiber fibers with some type of polymer like epoxy or polyester, and mixing those together in the mold, and then close up the molds and it all cures, and then you pop it out and you've got these wonderful parts that you trim up and clean up, and those are typically the most expensive. Typically gliders like that can be around $2,000.
A lot of people get frustrated because they'll take the airplane home, charge it up, and go crash it. And they'll put it away and never want to fly it again. But if you take those steps, if you find somebody that knows what they're doing, if you find somebody that's willing to help, and you're patient, anybody can fly a radio control airplane.
What we do is we go ahead and we have on Thursday evening and Friday evening, what we'll do is we'll go have an opening. It's just a social, come out and talk and get to know one another, do some registrations. On Friday, we have an event called the Aerotow, and we are very fortunate to have the salt flats available for us, where we take motorized airplanes and we'll pull scale airplanes up and releasing them, and then the sailplanes will go ahead and fly. And we have that option made available to us through the BLM, and we have the luxury. A lot of times these big airplanes on landing, if you have a crosswind or something like that, the wingtips they'll catch in the grass and they'll spin the airplanes around and sometimes even do damage to it. But with the salt flats being as flat as they are, it's easy for them to land and not hurting the planes or anything else.
Well, mostly online is how I've met most of the people. There's local clubs. There's a lot of club organizations within, cities or states that host gatherings that you get together within your state or within your region. And then there's, some U.S.-wide or even international contests or gatherings. And the awesome thing about slope flying is there's it's not a high degree of competition. It's mostly just about having fun and flying and hanging out and enjoying, the people. So it's not a super competitive environment like a lot of RC competitions. RC airplane competitions can be really highly competitive, and I don't like those.
About 8 or 9 years ago, we come into dynamic soaring, and what happened was Joe Wirtz and Pat Bowman were out of California. Were flying down there at a hill. The airplane got behind the hill, and they tried to bring it back up, and they noticed that the airplane came as fast back out of it as it did going down, where most of the time you get in the rotor and the airplanes tumble. So they brought it back, and now it's called dynamic soaring. The record is 445 miles an hour. The airplanes are 100 inches, the kinetic that holds the world record, and it weighs about 200 ounces, so it's quite heavy.
And yeah, it's my favorite form of flying. No motor, you can fly for an hour, 2 hours straight, because there's no motor or power for the motor that's needed. So
Nowadays you can buy an airplane that's factory assembled. All you need to do is pull out of the box, put in a few screws, charge up the battery, and go. Anybody can fly a remote control airplane.